Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a privilege to follow the member for Holborn St Pancras, and I would like to make an intervention on his speech. The cases that he has highlighted of Nicholson and Purdy are not covered by this legislation. Locked-in syndrome, which is a syndrome that he described of being paralysed except for movement of the head and the eyes, has no 6-month limit, and this bill makes the provision for people who are terminally ill and will die anyway within a 6-month period. Neither of the cases that he highlighted will fall within this. In fact, I met with a neurologist earlier on this week who spoke to me about a skiing accident he'd had, and he said to me, of course, the one thing all we neurologists fear is locked-in syndrome, and that was his fear during his head injury. But of course I had to tell him, but you don't apply in this bill. And I asked him, so how long can people with locked-in syndrome live? And he said, 30, 40 years, that's why we fear it. But of course, what doctor can say to someone with locked-in syndrome, you have 6 months? They can't. So, and one of the issues that has really bothered me about this bill has been the conflation between the conflated issues between what illnesses, conditions, diseases can be covered by this bill and what can't. And I have had locked-in syndrome so many times. I've also had motor neurone disease. That is also not an illness where you can put a 6-month time limit on. Again, people, I know the ambassador, and we always quote him, Stephen Hawkins, you know, many years later, still living. Who would have put 6 months on his life at any time? So those illnesses which people keep quoting, motor neurone disease and locked-in syndrome, this bill is not for them. So we must not discuss those issues and conflate those issues with this bill. No, actually, I'm not going to take any interventions because so many people are waiting to speak. And so they don't apply. In the 1980s, I had the privilege, the honour, I don't know what the right word is to use actually, as a nurse, to hold the hand of a young gay man when he was given the diagnosis of AIDS. Not HIV, AIDS. He was in a very bad way. He wasn't given 6 months, he was given 12 weeks. He's still alive today. Yeah. So are so many other young men and women at that time who were diagnosed with HIV and AIDS who were given less than 6 months to live. But of course, medical research ran ahead and found treatments to hold their life for longer while they developed even better treatments. And it's still a race that's in progress. Treatments are still being developed, but we've now reached the point where somebody today diagnosed with AIDS is far more likely to die from something else than they are of AIDS. But we would never have thought that in the 1980s. Now, I know many people here are probably thinking, but this isn't the 1980s. Well, you know, AIDS was not something which we knew was going to arrive in the 1980s, and we don't know what's down the road tomorrow, what new viral disease, and it will probably be a virus, given the information that we have, will land, and what will be the new AIDS of tomorrow. And so 6-month diagnoses worry me, because no doctor can accurately predict someone's life at 6 months. Another point I would like to make, and I'll be as brief as I can, is last August, and I'll use my personal case, last August, my very good friend, one of my closest friends, went to visit her consultant after a series of tests had been ordered by her GP. And at that meeting with the consultant, she was given 14 days to live. That was an accurate diagnosis, and it was accurate because it was 14 days. She went home, we got into bed, and I spent 14 days on her bed. Her death was painless and peaceful. It wasn't for everybody around, but it was for her. And those last 14 days were wonderful. Until the very end, when she was fast asleep and unknowing. And that is the beauty of palliative care today. No one needs to die a painless death today, because we have a combination of drugs which are administered to people in their final days, which ensure that they do not suffer from pain. However, the poison which is administered when somebody makes that choice to take their life is not pleasant. You know, they don't swallow this concoction of drugs and they fall asleep. It is not a nice end. It is certainly not peaceful, and they do choke. It is not a good death. So for people to argue that this is a good death and it's a choice, it is not a good death. It is a painful and barbaric death to die in this way. And so I would just like to make that point that, you know, I listened to the head of the hospice movement on Radio 4 today. The fears, I've read all the emails from people representing the hospice movement in my constituency. There is an issue that the hospice movement has very rightly highlighted, that the pressure on people within hospice will shift over a period of time. And I'd like to make a final point, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are people all over the country today who don't have a family or a relative as their next of kin. They don't have loved ones. For them, the next of kin is the state. And that sends a shiver of fear down my spine, that we would have a bill like this legislated for and approved, and so many people who are today protected by the law in the future will not know that protection, because their next of kin will be the state. And so when they feel that they are a burden, when they feel under pressure, who is it who will coerce them? Who is it who will be feeling the budgetary constraints of looking after those people? So that is my concern. And I'll end on that, Madam Deputy Speaker.